Hello. Today I'd like to venture into just a kind of a totally different realm than what I'm used to here on my channel, switching gears as it were, and discuss another passion of mine, which is home theater. And to talk about, really in my opinion, an unsung hero in the home theater subwoofer category. That is the Dayton Audio Sub 1200. Now, most of you at this point might be going, who the heck is Dayton Audio? I've never heard of them. Dayton Audio is one of those internet brands. They don't get a lot of publicity or fanfare, but quite frankly, in my opinion, the internet brands are actually better because you're not paying for the name, you're paying for the product itself. Whereas with products like Klipsch and stuff like that, they want you to pay a bunch of money just because they're Klipsch. So, as far as this is concerned, the Dayton Audio Sub 1200, in my opinion, if you're looking to spend, $150 or less on a brand new subwoofer, this is the sub to have. It is truly an amazing sub for the price. What happened, a little bit of a backstory on this, the folks at Dayton Audio are actually what they call a do-it-yourselfer. They build their own subs and have been doing it for years, and they sat down one day and said, okay, here's our budget, of under $150. What's the best sub that we can build for this amount of money? And the result was the Dayton Audio Sub 1200. Now, the Sub 1200 is actually kind of in that price range where it compares to a better known sub, the Polk Audio PSW10, and in my opinion there's just no contest between the two. The Polk Audio PSW10 is not really even a true subwoofer. It's more of a large low-end mid-range, just kind of cheap rumble box, and that's about all it is. Whereas the Polk Audio PSW10 is actually, or I'm sorry, not the Polk Audio PSW10, the Dayton Audio Sub 1200 is in fact closer to a true subwoofer. I'm going to go ahead and cover the differences between the two. First and foremost, the Dayton Audio Sub 1200 is a 12-inch sub, whereas the PSW10 from Polk is a 10-inch sub. So right off the bat, you're getting a larger sub, which generally speaking is better for range and low-end response. The second thing is continuous power, or RMS power. As any person who's an audio fan can tell you, the continuous power is a far more realistic representation of a subwoofer's true capabilities. The Polk Audio PSW10 claims 100 watts. Well, it turns out that's actually peak power. Continuous power, it is only capable of producing 50 watts. And as such, by subwoofer standards, that's just pathetically weak. The Dayton Audio Sub 1200, they don't even rate peak power. They just focus on the real stat, which is the continuous power, is 120 watts. So you're getting not only a 12-inch sub versus a 10, you're also getting more than double the power for continuous wattage. Now, the Dayton Audio is a front-firing sub. Personally, I prefer that. I know some people like the down-firing ones, but if you've got a room that's carpeted like mine, a down-firing sub, has a tendency to get kind of muffled a little bit by that, whereas the front-firing sub, it just pushes everything straight out into the room. As I said, that's just a personal preference of mine. Different people argue different things. It's just a personal preference. It does, however, have a down-firing port. There is a port in the middle of the sub on the bottom. So it is ported, and it does have a down-firing port. The Dayton Audio Sub 1200 is a pretty versatile sub. It's where it really shines over the Polk Audio PSW10 is that it hits down to about 25 hertz. Now, realistically, you know, I mean, that's really pushing it for the range of the sub. But in comparison, the Polk Audio PSW10 gets down somewhere in the 35 to 40 hertz range and is ideally tuned to about 50 hertz, as most commercial subs are. Which brings up the next point. Dayton Audio tuned this sub incredibly low, so it's lower tuned than much lower tuned than 50 hertz. So it's optimized for lower frequencies, which are, quite honestly, that's what you want out of a sub, because there's a lot of low-end frequencies that you're not picking up with these, you know, kind of just cheap rumble boxes. This sub does an amazing job of reproducing that kind of true deep low-end theater or, you know, low-end true movie theater rumble. Surprisingly so. I'm surprised at how low this thing is able to get, and just to produce that sort of, you know, really deep low-end rumble rather than just, you know, the standard, you know, 50 hertz, you know, rumble sort of thing. This is very good for home theater. I would say if you're, you know, into audio, you know, for bass heavy music, it's probably okay. But realistically, you know, if you're wanting something that's just an incredible subwoofer for music, you're going to have to go much higher end, you know, something like SVS, HSU, REL. But it does okay, you know, for the price and for the money. And as I said, you know, no sub in this price range or even close to it is going to be great for music. So it really shines as just kind of a cheap low-end home theater sub. One of the other things that that I really appreciate about this sub is that it doesn't have that you know, that cheap distorted splat sound that the Polks tend to produce. They're terrible at it. I've tried out a bunch of them, and they just produce that distorted splat sound. It has about all the grace and accuracy of an old lady falling down the stairs. You're only going to get that with the Dayton Audio if you literally crank the heck out of everything on your amp. The amp on the sub, I mean, cranking up, like, you know, adding 15 decibels or whatever to your subwoofer on your amp, and then cranking this thing all the way up. That's about the only time you're going to hear anything close to that. Whereas the Polk I used to have, it would just sit there and just splat all the time and produce that sort of, you know, hideous distorted sound. So what I've done with this subwoofer is, you know, I discovered something early on. Out of the box, the sub is not impressive at all. I know that's going to sound strange given my glowing review of it this far. What it is that this sub, like no other, requires a good solid break-in period, and you need some solid source material with which to do it. I'm a firm believer in the likes of Roland Emmerich films because they're incredibly intense for subwoofers. Stuff like Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, any of those films would be great if you're trying to break in this sub and just really get it to shine. Apollo 13 would be another amazing one to do on there. You know, the scenes with the rocket launches, they'll shake your whole house with this thing. So my recommendation is do not judge this sub until you get a chance to you know, run it, and I mean literally, you know, run it for a grand total of about 20 hours or so. About at that point, it starts really breaking in and getting to the point where it's going to give you good performance, because it's incredibly tight once you first get it out of the box. And as I said, the break-in for this sub is actually, the difference is more prominent with the Dayton Audio than any other sub I've tested. So for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give a little sound clip demonstration from a Roland Emmerich film. Unfortunately, there's no good way to really reproduce the sound of a sub without actually being there, because quite honestly, a cell phone mic is just not going to pick things up the way it should, as far as actually being there. So just take it for what it's worth, and I'll just do a quick little clip real quick.